Hey everybody, what's going on? So, I want to do a quick video here on some upgrades I'm doing to my Trx4. And I'm going to have a lot of videos coming up here pretty soon on this truck. I've actually got a new body over there, a ton of scale accessories, a bunch of stuff. I'm going kind of full scale build with this. Got a bunch more hot racing parts. I'm getting some stuff from RC4 wheel drive. Just collecting all new parts. This body's taking a pretty good beating. I think it's time to make this a scale rig. You know, we've got some sleeping bags up here waiting for some more stuff to come in and everything like that. But what I wanted to get to make this truck a little stable for when I paint it, because over here I've got, you probably can't see, I've got some pretty bad, marks in the body where it's rolled. But I'm going to use this more as a trailing truck. But what we're going to install today are these Hot Racing 10 millimeter extended portal axles. So this is the part of the axle that's just going to come out of your portal housing. And it's going to push your wheels out 10 mil on each side. So 20 mil, that's going to give you roughly about 0.73, about call it 3/4 of an inch wider stance. And we'll open the package, I'll show you what you get. And I've already installed one side, so I thought that way I could show you guys what it looks like, side by side. I figured that was better than just showing you a before and after. So here is the side here. Now we are running factory body. This is off Endura beadlock wheels, so these might stick out just a little bit more than stock, and the Proline BF Goodrich rock terrain tires. As you guys can see kind of right there, it doesn't really stick out from the side of the vehicle too much. Now if we go over here, here's the 10 mil offset. That's not a ton, but you can kind of see it does skateboard it out just a little bit. And what I'm going for on this truck, now if I was going for complete scale realism, honestly, I would have went with like white painted wheels. I'm not going old school with this. My idea for this truck is sort of like, modified scale. I want it to look real, but I want it to look like, I got a hold of it and, souped it up, jacked it up, and made it more off-road worthy. So, I kind of think these look a little cooler. It's going to give it definitely a little bit more, stability from rollovers and stuff. But that is what the setup looks like. So let's go ahead and tear into the packaging here, and we'll show you guys what you get. And these are actually pretty easy to install, even for a novice RC guy. So here's what you get with the kit. You get 2 axles, you get 2 spacers, and you get some new Hot Racing wheel nuts. They're anodized blue. Blue does not go with my color, with any colors on this truck, so I'm not going to use those. I'm just going to use my stock wheel nuts. Now, when you do buy these, realize that you can get these in standard, and you can get them in the 10 mil wide. So if you don't want the extended, you can get these that are probably a little stiffer. Now, see up here in the front, there's a little hole there. That's for your stub axle. And then back here, this is what's going to lock it into your portal. So you will have to disassemble your portals. And this right here is a couple little spacers that are going to go on. Right here on your. Right here is your your wheel nut. Your stub axle. So that's going to push this out. So that's actually going to sit in behind there, give it a little more strength. You probably don't have to put those in there, but it's probably a good idea too. It's just going to give it some more strength. So this is really easy to do. So we're going to go ahead and do the back first, and then we'll do the front. The front's a little more complicated, but it's not bad. You basically have about 10 screws per axle. So now on the back, what the first thing we're going to do is twist your hub around. You'll take a little Allen wrench, you'll pop the little grub screw out of there and set that aside. Pull your stub axle off. That's the first thing we're going to do. That's going to leave just the axle. And then you'll see some bolts in the front. Don't worry about taking those off yet. Now back here in the back, you've got one top, one bottom bolts that go in like this. Take both those out. They're pretty long. They're probably about that long. I'll show those to you when we get them out. And then your entire portal is going to come off. Now, your axle shaft might come out with it. It might stay in the truck. We'll take a look at it in a minute. And then you're going to take out the 2 bolts in the front and the 6 in the back and disassemble your portal. So first, let's go ahead and get the portal off. Then we'll take a look at what's involved in disassembly. So we've got our We got our stub axle off, and we got our 2 cross bolts out of the back. You know, trying to hustle through this, show you guys this pretty quick. You don't need to see me take a bunch of bolts out. So now our portal should just slide off. Now, here is our portal assembly. 2 bolts in the front, 6 in the back. These are all the same size. Now, when you put these back together, obviously be careful you don't strip anything, but to strip this down, and then be careful when you're separating it, because some of the stuff can fall out. But if you're real careful, nothing will fall out and you don't have to worry about anything. Now, here is the axle I was talking about right here. Go ahead and kind of pull that out. Now, notice they are kind of has a flat edge. So when this goes back in, you kind of want to turn the tires and sort of wiggle it. And once you get it the right, once it keys in, it locks in. So make sure you've got that in the right way. It keys in to the diff, and it keys in to the portal. So we'll take that out. I'll put it in the housing and then slide it all back in. I just find it's easier that way. You know, but there's your axle shaft. They do make hardened versions of those if you want to get one. I don't see any reason for it. So let's go ahead and get this portal broke down. I'll show you what you have to do inside to change out to that extended axle. Okay, so I'm going to try to do this so you guys can see it. I don't really want to do this one-handed, and I think this is something kind of important for you to see. I'm trying to use my tabletop tripod here, and it's really janky. But okay, I got all the bolts out of the portal here. You can see 6 in the back, 2 in the front, and then you've got your two cross bolts that go through the side. Here is your spot where your axle goes into your axle tube, that stays on the car. So take this, and we're just going to peel this apart real easy. And you basically, here is your inner portal, and just kind of set it off to the side. Now, in this one, you've got a little bit of grease in here. You can add a little more if your TRX is pretty old. Mine's pretty new. The grease is still okay. The backs are okay. The fronts, I put just a little bit in. But what we're going to do is we're going to grab right here, and we're going to push this axle out. Now, when this axle comes out, if you see right here, it has this pin. It has this cross pin. Now, it's really easy for it to come out. We're just going to set that off to the side. Now, you don't have to take this out. If the gear falls out, it's not a big deal. It does have to go in a certain way. Now would be a good time to check that bearing right there. We're just going to set that down off to the side. So, grab our new 10 mil offset axle. Make sure your pin doesn't fall out. Pull that off, and we're going to set that axle off to the side so we don't get them mixed up. So what we're going to do is take the pin, slide it through the axle shaft, kind of hold it so your pin doesn't, it basically just sits in there. And then take your pin, slide it through your portal housing, and twist it. And what you're going to feel is kind of hold the gear, and it will lock into that gear. I'm going to try to do that. Now make sure that pin is kind of centered, but if you turn this, it will drop in right there. It keys into this gear. Now this gear is only keyed on one side. So if you flip the gear over, it won't key in there. If you do that, your portal will spin. You're liable to mess something up. That pin come out and get in your gears, and nothing's going to work. This locks it in. And come right back over here. So you've got basically your reduction gear and your portal. So basically gear bottom, gear top. Doesn't really matter how you orientate it. Just, I'm holding pressure here so this doesn't fall apart. What we're going to do is we're going to put these back together. Make sure they mesh together. The biggest thing is make sure, so I just popped that out. I just popped that gear out. So, all right, we'll have to take it back apart now. Okay, so don't drop the bearing. They go flying. All right, so I actually had to figure out how to put this back together myself. So you've got your portal gear. It's geared on one side. It's got sort of a flange over here on the other. Basically, the flange goes into the bearing. Now, this can go either... It looks like it can go either way, but this way, if you put the gear in first, it's very sloppy. Right over here on this end is your machine surface. Pop that in. Obviously, make sure your bearing feels good. Grab your portal housing here, and this is going to slide from the outside in. So the gear going into the housing, the bearing right there, Make sure everything turns freely. Okay, so this time we're going to hold this bearing. Now, I didn't have a problem with any of the other side. This side's a little loose, a little more loose, manufacturing tolerances. So what we're going to do is I'm going to hold, once again, hold my shaft so this doesn't hold my shaft. So make sure that's keyed in. I'm going to come down here and I'm just going to slide this whole thing together. And when it clicks together, you should be able to turn that axle and actually see that inside turning. That's probably not going to come out on camera. And look at your housing and make sure that your housing is solid as well. Make sure it mates up really good. Now, go ahead and put your screws in, get all of them started, and then tighten them in a cross pattern. And while I'm putting these last couple of screws in, let's talk about screwing. So when you guys are doing this, do not, I repeat, do not use power tools. I don't use power tools on any of my RCs. I have a very small drill that I will use to maybe take my X-Max apart. But when I put stuff back together, it's always bad. Now these, they will get tight, but if you just keep going, it's going to round them off. These don't lock down tight. Like they're, so you're going to have to use some finesse to know when these are tight. So go around, like I said, don't, put them in and then go back and give them all one little final, make sure everything's tight. Because, you want this mildly waterproofed, because, if you take your truck off-roading and stuff like that, if you're just rock crawling with it, whatever, it's probably not that big a deal. But, if you're taking this thing through water and stuff like that, you want your portals definitely greased well. You want them as tight to the elements as you can get them. And that's why taking these apart every once in a while is a good thing, because, you need to check your bearings, maybe pull the seals off the bearings, replace them. You can get fast eddy bearing kits pretty cheap and replace all these. Now, once again, before I put this back together, I'm going to check here. Twisting this, everything, it does have a little play in it, but that's fine. Everything here is twisting. I can actually put my finger and feel that locking in. So now, your portal, obviously, when it goes back together, the axle faces up in your portal housing. And now, and one of the reasons I'm not re-greasing all this right now is one thing I'm going to do later is I'm actually going to do some brass upgrades on this, I think. I haven't decided yet. So when I do that, I'll repack all this with grease. So I'm going to be back into this truck before too awful long. So, like I said, these have a flat spot in them. They are keyed, so just twist until it drops in, and you can kind of see, they will just fall right out. Nothing really holds them in there. They're just held in by, pressure when you get everything bolted together. So if you twist this, you'll see it is actually turning your axle. So let me reposition the camera here, and hopefully we can get you guys a good view. Super professional quality video here. I tell you what, large scale life. Man, this tripod is a piece. I'm gonna take this thing out and run it over the damn X-Max. All right, cool. So I think you can see it okay. So like I said, make sure your axle's orientated the right way. Hole inside your main body here, and you can replace these with metal, whatever you want to do. Now, when you slide this in, it may not go all the way. So what I do is I'm going to twist very slightly. Now right there, it just keyed in and it just slid all the way in. So now if I turn this wheel over here, it's actually turning. So that actually keys in, make sure it's the right way. Now we're going to go ahead and take our two long bolts, the two longer of our bolts right here. So all your bolts in your portal is going to be the same. You have these two longer ones, and they're kind of the cross bolts here, one top, one bottom. Go ahead and thread those in. Once again, not obnoxiously tight, but tight. And that is going to get your portal reinstalled back onto the truck. And I'm just going to leave the camera running for a minute, because honestly this is only going to take a second. There's no reason to stop and edit. Yeah, these muffin tins I've got over here really, they definitely help. This bottom bolt is kind of a pain. The rear bumper is mildly in the way. These are actually a pretty long Allen, hex heads, so don't have to worry about it too much. We'll get those reinstalled. All right, so we got our rear portal reinstalled. Everything's tight. Everything's looking good. All right, so switch over to our smaller Allen key. Now, we'll go ahead and reinstall our hub, or our stub axle, I guess, for the lack of a better term, your hex adapter. Now, this will come out on screen. You guys can see that. You see how it's got a little flange up there on top? It's flat here. It's got a little, little nub up the top. That little nub goes toward the vehicle, so that faces inside, kind of rides against the bearing. Because here's the thing: if you put this on backwards, now if you had the extensions on there, obviously it's not going to rub, but that's just going to cause you a friction. Regularly, this is going to ride up against there. But now, before we put that on, with the Hot Racing setup, we're going to grab one of our shims, one of our 10 mil shims. We're going to go ahead and slide the shim on, and then obviously we'll put our axle back, or our hex adapter back on. And the way I found this is kind of easiest is take a small. This is probably the hardest part of the entire assembly, is getting everything here lined back up. Once you get it aligned, it's pretty easy. Take your grub screw. And this little grub screw is about the only one that uses a smaller size. And if you get it lined up right, it's just going to fall straight through, basically. All right, so I started on the wrong end. That's the side that's actually threaded. So you go in from the other side. All right, there, it dropped right through. You probably could put a little Loctite on this. I'm not going to, because I'm gonna end up taking this apart again before too awful long. All right, cool. So let me grab the camera here, and hopefully this doesn't get too shaky. Show you guys how this looks here once it's done. So right here is it's basically your setup here. So we've got your spacer right here, and that's going to take up, if you didn't have that, this would still sit here, but this is going to let it ride against that bearing. It's not going to, it's going to allow that bearing too to hold in there, because this bearing could pop out if you didn't have that spacer in there. So that's pretty important. We got that on there now. Now we can go ahead and put our wheel back on, but let's get the back wheel on. Obviously you guys know how to do that, and then we'll go ahead and take a look at how to do the front. Okay, so went ahead and pulled the front hex adapter off. I think you guys have pretty much well seen how to do that. Obviously take the grub screw out and slide it off. Now, to get the front portal off is few more bolts. You've got basically the same thing, 2 bolts in the front, 6 in the back, but getting the portal off is a little more difficult. Not a ton, but a little bit. So what you gotta do is, try to do this through the viewfinder. No depth perception. All right, so you're gonna go right back here. Now right here, your steering linkage, you're going to go from the top side, and you're going to take this bolt out right here. Now on the other side, when you take this out, you're actually going to have 2 bars. One for, I think, what they call the pitman arm or something like that, and the other for the steering link. Now this one just basically, the bolt is shorter, so it goes through. This rides in the middle of 2 pieces of polymer of the C-hub, and that'll just go through and tighten down. The other one has the piece that rides in the center here, and also has another piece up here at the top, or what is the bottom now. So mind you, on the other side, you're going to have basically 2 linkages, longer bolt, linkage middle, linkage top bolt. So obviously mind that. I would show it, but you can't really see it where I got the tire back on. After you're done there, you're going to come up here and you're going to take this bolt out right here for the kingpin, and on the very top side, just opposite this, is the top for the kingpin. Now, king. I don't even know if that's a right word. That's what we'd say in skateboards and stuff. But basically, now when you pull these out, when you pull these bolts out, be very mindful. There is a little, I think it's a brass bushing in here, top and bottom. If you lose those, you're screwed. Make sure you don't drop those little bushings out when you take these out. Take the steering arm loose. Take these two bolts out. The whole portal and everything with the CV and all that will come out. Now we'll go ahead and grab our C-hub assembly here, and notice it comes out with your half shaft and everything. So in the back where this just came out, this is going to stay attached. Now once you disassemble it all, it can come loose, but now basically same thing. Take the 6 bolts and the 2 bolts out, replace your axle just as you did in the rear portal, reassemble exactly the same way. Cool. So we got everything back together. Everything seems to be working good. Like I say, guys, just take your time. It's pretty simple. You know, about 9 to 8 to 10 bolts per wheel. Pretty easy to do. This will take you beginning to end. I mean, if you never tore this apart, this is even taking your time. It's a half-hour, 45-minute job. As you can see, it definitely sticks the wheels out a little bit. Not a absolute ton. It's not obnoxious, but it is enough to tell. And even on camera here, it's not really coming out. You can definitely tell. When you look at it from stock to now, or if you had a stock one sitting beside it, you can definitely tell that they do stick out a little bit more, because generally these are right in line under the fender wells. I definitely think it looks good. Can't wait to get the new body and stuff painted for it. Got the Yeah Racing diamond plate on there. Got some more stuff from Yeah Racing. Got a new bumper coming from Hot Racing. Got the Hot Racing grill for the new body. Got got the bead locks we did here. The new tires, dual stage foams. Got my scale sleeping bags up there. My Yeah Racing net. Hopefully. My cooler and all my stuff will come in pretty soon. Got a bunch of Shapeways, stuff from Shapeways from Night Customs. Got the Yeah Racing tire cover. Hopefully get the RC 4-wheel-drive jack, some window covers. Got the Yeah Racing trailer hitch on there. So maybe we'll have to pick up a trailer for it. But there you go, guys. Hot Racing portal axle extensions, 10 mil on each side. Go pick you a set of them up. Catch you later.